All right, guys, this is going to be our first and five podcast here. We're here with Coach Jeff from Youth Football Online. I'll give him a moment to introduce himself, but all we're going to do in these first and five podcasts is we're going to have each coach or each member ask 5 questions. Guest goes first, and we'll alternate. Coach Jeff, do you want to introduce Youth Football Online and what you guys do?
Hi, guys. How you doing? Coach, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. Couldn't wait to do this. I've been coaching youth football for 15 years, co-founder of youthfootballonline.com. And I hope you guys get something out of this. I think we have some really great questions, and I'm excited to talk some football.
All right, sounds good. Well, in the interest of getting us going then, Jeff, if you got the first question teed up, go ahead.
Yep. All right, Coach, what is the best blocking scheme for undersized offensive linemen? Many times in youth football, a lot of teams are undersized. My team in particular, too, we were very undersized. So.
Yeah, I think at all levels of football, it's going to be a zone scheme just because you're not trying to create movement. You're allowing flow to create movement of itself. Like if I'm running a gap scheme and I'm trying to double down through a nose tackle or something, that kid's just bigger than my kids. I may not be able to move that kid. But if I'm trying to reach that kid and I'm smaller than he is, he's going to block himself either by not running into his gap, so I'm going to get a front side hit, or by running laterally along the line of scrimmage to get back in his gap. And now he's moving himself. I'm going to have to do it. So I think at all levels of football, you see the undersized linemen normally succeed in whether it's inside or wide zone or whatever your flavor is. I think the wider the zone, the easier it is for the smaller kid. The tight zone and inside zone gets a little bit more vertical, and it's not quite as easy, but it's still better than I think some of the gap scheme. Duo, if you're undersized, is going to be very difficult. Where zone, which is, yes, you're all still stepping one way, but it's completely different intention. It's literally the opposite intention. That's good. And you see, if you look at the old late 90s Broncos, they were all undersized, fast, athletic guys. And that's what you see those zone teams getting now. So I think that's the answer even at the youth football level. I don't know, Coach, you feel differently?
No, I agree. The more and more I learned, because I am a gap scheme guy. I'm a wing T guy. We're going to run what we run regardless. But just as I learn more about zone, I think it's simpler because, we got to teach buck. We got to teach trap. We got to teach buck sweep, which isn't, it's a little bit different than how we run our buck. So we're a little bit oddball with that. But we got a buck. It kind of hits off tackle, buck sweep. So there's and then jet blocking, your jet sweep. That's our core stuff. So that's 4 blocking schemes right there. So I think with zone, you could just build everything around one blocking scheme, get really good at it, have simple rules. Just having kids understanding, allows them to play faster. And for me, speed is power. So in a way, so I think that's more and more, I'm starting to like zone better too. So.
Okay. All right. Seems like you're in agreement on that one. So my first question to you is you've got a lot more experience coaching youth football players than I do. I coached my first season of youth football this past year just because my own 8-year-old did his first full youth season. So in your 15 years of coaching there, what's been the biggest challenge of working with the younger players and then the younger population in football?
Well, I would definitely say attention span. A lot of that's on the coaches too. If you coach an 8-year-olds, 9, even the kid, I coached 7th graders this year, and I usually coach around 6 through 8th, so middle school the last couple of years. And even a little bit older kids, middle school kids, they have very short attention spans. So I just think it's on the coaches. You have to keep it, you got to keep practice moving. You have to script practices. You have to have a plan. And, biggest challenge is just keeping things moving. Because if you take too long to set up the drills, coaches don't know the practice plan. You don't have a plan. Kids are just going to stand around, and it only, it becomes very challenging to get the kids back once you lose them or they get bored. So I think the biggest challenge is attention span. And I think the solution for that, for the most part, is scripting out your practices, making sure your coaches know the practice script and what they're going to implement. And then another thing too is setting things up beforehand. Like after we stretch, we'll already have our line mat out. We'll do some of our pursuit drill stuff because that's something we do every day. And then just setting it up ahead of time, having it ready, like a drill, even if you're doing agility stuff, cone drills, have the cone set up before you start it. Be ready so you don't have to get ready, I think is the biggest thing too. Just have a plan, because attention span, these kids is they're done. If you're not bringing the energy, you don't have a plan, you're not organized, you'll lose the kids, whether they're 8-year-olds or 14. And I feel like that applies even high school, college, I'm sure too, right? Everyone has short attention span. So
yeah, I think that problem's been exacerbated with social media, to be 100% honest.
100%. These kids are on their phone before practice starts. It's crazy.
Yeah.
They go, they run, they check their phone during a water break. And our water breaks are like 3-4 minutes. Unless it's hot, we'll do more frequent ones, maybe a little bit longer. But these kids are on their phone between practice sessions, like practice period. So, yeah, I think attention span is the big one. Just got to keep the kids moving, keep it upbeat energy.
Yep.
I think for the most
All
part.
Right.
Yeah, but,
All right, Joe. All right.
All right. How can coaches help their quarterbacks grow into a confident, effective leader? This was more so a question for me too. Like my quarterback, he was a first-year QB last year, and he still, even though he got more confident, he just was lacking leadership skills. And I had mixed results on how I approached it. So I would definitely want to hear your thoughts. And I know that's a big thing for youth coaches too. Everyone knows quarterback, you need them to be leaders. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really broad question because everyone in so many different roles in life, not just quarterbacks, wants to develop people, not just kids, into leaders. And it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of organizations, football and otherwise, suffer from a lack of confident leadership. So this is a really broad question for a lot of folks out there. The first things that immediately come to mind are first patience on the part of the coach. I see a lot of situations in which a kid makes a mistake and a coach is very quick to jump on a kid. And if you want a kid to be good at something, you have to remember that in order to be good at something, you have to at some point start as a beginner. And you have to get through those bad reps to get to the good ones. And that comes with time, and that comes with confidence, and confidence comes with positive reps, and positive reps come with practice. Like all these things take time. So when a kid makes a mistake, it's really important that we don't immediately jump on them. We go help them correct it, and especially with the quarterback, quietly and intellectually, perhaps is the way that I should say it. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is patience. Second is the way that you communicate with the quarterback signals to the team how they should communicate with the quarterback. Yeah. I'll give you one story here. Back in the 60s when quarterbacks used to call their own plays, quarterbacks were much more leaders at that point than they are now because they had to be the coaching staff on the field. They called their own plays. So when Bart Starr was calling his own plays for Vince Lombardi, that was a big deal. And Vince Lombardi was known to be, I don't want to say aggressive, but he was known to be quite verbal in the way that he coached. And Bart Starr went up to the office, one day after practice and said, "Hey, coach, you want me to be a leader on the field? You want those 10 guys to look back at me in the huddle and believe in me, right?" And coach said, "Yes." He said, "Well, then you can't undermine me on the field. You can't scream at me during practice when I make a mistake. You can't sit there and make them lose confidence in my ability to lose the job. If I make a mistake, I will come to your office after practice. You can yell at me then, but on the field, you have to talk to me like an equal. Because if you don't, the players will not see me as a leader. They will see me as someone that's been put down by the coaching staff." And from that day forward, Vince Lombardi never yelled at him in front of the players. Doesn't mean he didn't get chewed out in the office or anything, but it meant that the way that we look at a quarterback is the way that players are going to perceive our perception of the quarterback. And so if we get on him too much, that ends up being an issue. As far as kids being leaders, I think in learning those leadership skills, I think when it comes with time, I think it also comes with letting the kids be comfortable being themselves. Some kids are not super vocal. I hear so many kids come to me and say, "My coach wants me to be more talkative. My coach wants me to be more talkative." And the kid is not talkative. He's just an introverted kid. So putting him in a situation in which he's uncomfortable has some benefits, but it also has detractors. If you're asking the kid to do something he's destined to fail at because he's not comfortable at it, you've put him in a situation where he now lacks confidence in his leadership skills, so he's not going to develop the leadership skills. So we have to let kids be themselves. If it's a quiet kid, it's okay, well, then you need to lead by example. Make sure you're the first kid in line. Make sure you're the kid who goes and quietly takes a teammate aside when they make a mistake. Allow kids to be who they are so you can kind of meet them where their feet are. And as the saying goes, bloom where they're planted. You can't turn Trevor Lawrence into Tom Brady. It's just not going to work. I'm using those two because they're kind of opposite personalities.
Yeah, one's more outgoing.
Trevor Lawrence is very quiet. Tom Brady is very aggressive. You can't make one into the other, but you can allow them each to thrive at what they do, provided their skill set is adequate or good. So that would be my immediate thoughts. I know they're not super concrete as to how to approach it, but those would be my first thoughts.
No, I definitely like the point of, how the coach treats or talks to his quarterback. The kids will kind of mimic that, or, because I'm thinking back too, where there were situations where I've seen a coach yell at the quarterback, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, get the snap, make the throw." Like in parents, even it's crazy.
Yeah,
so it kind of reminded me when I was sitting in the stands the year before I took over the team I have this past season. I was hearing it. I'm like, everyone's just blaming the quarterback. It started with the coaches that were there yelling at him. So, and the kid was very quiet and didn't respond well. Wasn't very receptive to hard coaching. He was more, you just kind of have to build up on his little victories and just be positive with them. But I thought it was all good points.
Okay. All right. So big thing for kids is obviously making practice fun and keeping it enjoyable to keep them coming back, because they're not going to work like an NFL squad. So what do you do to make sure practices are fun while still making sure you're teaching good habits?
I think the first thing you do to make it fun, and it really depends. Like I've been at the middle school level the last 4 years, actually. So we've been incorporating more fun into the drills, and how to make practices more fun, regardless how young or old they are, is to make them competitive, and not over the top competitive where it's not fun to either, where like the losing team does a million laps or a bunch of push-ups. We just make everything we do is competitive. We'll have one practice at the end of the week where we'll let the kids play some kind of relay race game, little stuff like that. They like that. But as far as everything we do in practice is competitive. Not necessarily always keeping score. It's setting let's say I'll use this as an example. Every year when we go offensive indie, we'll take actually our quarterbacks, our running backs, and our receivers, all our skill kids, and we'll do some agility stuff. We'll do a 2-cone drill, we call it, and we'll set that drill up in 5 different locations. So there's 5 going at a time, and they're naturally competing against each other. And then we have coaches pushing them and stuff too. And on top of that, we get more reps in. We don't have 2 drill lines for 15 kids that are getting 2 reps every 20 minutes. We don't have time for that. We want to condition and do reps, but we'll do that 2-cone drill, and they naturally compete with each other. And then that 2-cone drill, we basically set it up, cone on the goal line, another cone on the 15. These are all ball handlers, skill position players. So on our snap count, they'll fire out. They're all racing each other. They'll go around the cone. So not only do you condition your players, teach them to compete, have fun with it, you're also teaching them to fire out on our snap count. We're also teaching them to keep that wrist above elbow, high and tight, points of pressure. We say wrist above elbow is the language we use for it. And then when they go around the cone, they switch the ball to the outside hand, and then they finish through the end zone. So there's a million different relevant football stuff, but also making it fun. Telling the kids to finish, go score. That's what all our coaches say. And then when they score, the next kid goes up, get ready, and then the coach high five. Like we're celebrating, we're pretending we scored. So that's kind of like we're simulating. We always want to practice scoring, even if it's on air. Everything we're doing, we're trying to score a touchdown. Whether it's trap, it doesn't matter. We're doing drill, we're trying to score. Right. So I think making it competitive, having the coaches upbeat, no matter what you're doing, upbeat and fun, and look like you want to be there, the kids will want to be there. So I think overall, it's making them competitive and looking like you want to be there and celebrating the victories. That's just everything we do is we're competing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like hardcore, or we beat you. We'll line the kids up, multiple lines, let them naturally compete against each other. So that's kind of how we've done it, and it's worked pretty well.
Makes sense. All right.
How do you make a first-year player more aggressive? This is a big one, big question in the youth football community, because there's a lot of first-year players or young.
Yeah. I think that it kind of goes back to a little bit the quarterback question, where how do we build confidence? And it is, to your point earlier, it's the small victories sometimes. Making a player aggressive to me is a question of confidence. And confidence is how much does a kid believe they can execute the skill that's being asked of them. And that means both in a raw context, where like, am I good enough to do the skill? It could also mean in a negative context, like I made a mistake. Can I recover and still have a positive rep the next time? And as specifically relates to contact, that's a really important question that kids have to ask of themselves. So then the root of this becomes, how do we create confidence in physical contact, right? Because that's what's going to lead to a kid being more aggressive, that they think they can do it, so they'll do it aggressively.
Right.
And I think that begins with proper drill progression. Right, you've got to begin, like, I know everyone's seen a tackling progression where you start from a half kneel and hit with the near shoulder through the pad, and then you build to your standing and walking. Like, if you go through that whole process of going from the smallest victory that a kid can be successful at, and build it up increasingly complex and increasingly difficult over an appropriate amount of time, the kids will develop that confidence. And then I think the second part of that goes, if your drill progression is good, how's your interaction with your player? Are you knocking them down when they make a mistake? Or are you telling them, encouraging them to get back up and try again? Some coaches will say, hey, you missed that tackle, miss a block. Hey, kid, how come you didn't make that block? You've got to be aggressive. Because I know I need to be aggressive. That was the whole drill. Say, hey, that wasn't bad. Your foot was in the right space. Let's go get it next time. And encourage them to go again. And then you're setting them up to have the small victories. Make sure you put them in good matchups and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we had a kid like that on our team. When I coached third and fourth graders this year, I took all the new kids because we had 2 returning coaches we had 3 third and fourth grade teams in our league or in our town. And I took the new one because my kid's only in second grade. So I took all the new kids. And so we had a whole bunch of new kids. We had 1 new lineman. We had mostly new linemen, but we had 1 new lineman who was big, but really soft. And it clicked for him about 3 or 4 weeks in, and all of a sudden it flipped, and he was like, "Oh, I can do this." And it got to the point where it was matchup dependent. If early in the season, no matter who he was against, he'd kind of back up and absorb the hit. He wouldn't move forwards. He was just trying to set a pick, essentially. By the end of the season, 75-80% of the time, he'd go after the other kid a little bit more. His fundamentals were terrible, but at least he was aggressive by that point. There were some kids who, if they were bigger than him, he still got a little bit scared, but you started to see that threshold for fear. It took more and more weight to get him to that point. So his confidence built over the course of those small victories. And while it looked like a breakthrough moment, like week 3 of the season, it wasn't a breakthrough moment. It was a whole bunch of little moments that happened to get noticed in a particular game. And I think that's a point that's worth noting. We think that teaching a kid to be aggressive is going to be a momentary thing, like, oh, the light bulb's going to go off. And even I just described this kid as the light bulb going off. The light bulb didn't go off. The light bulb was slowly turning on. It was a dimmer getting brighter and brighter until someone noticed the light was on. All the little reps were, okay, I hit that kid last week and I didn't win, but this week I hit him and I moved him. And it's like, oh, I took a good step and my coach noticed. And all these little moments build up the confidence. And then that moment where the coaches or teammates notice he went and hit someone hard, again, that moment didn't happen in isolation. So some coaches like, oh, let's just put them in nutcracker drill. Let's put them all in one of these traditional contact drills, bull in the ring, which you're not supposed to do and shouldn't do. He'll get it. Let's snap it. Like, that's not the way it's going to work. You got to have those small victories, and what seems like a breakthrough, it's going to be a breakthrough in name only. Functionally, it's going to take a long time to turn that, not a long time, but it'll be a gradual process to turn that light on. At least that's my opinion. I think is what worked for my kids, this past year, since I had so many new ones. So it worked
that approach worked well for me this year, just celebrating. There was a lot of kids that weren't new. They just weren't aggressive. And I took a lot of them myself too, but celebrating those little victories, man, no matter how minimal it is so big. And then just one other aspect too is, I think, the coaches got to be encouraging, but I also think the teammates have to be encouraging too. And I'm not saying you let your better player let him get the best of them. I'm not saying that, but like when a kid, like, got to be a team. When a kid isn't typically aggressive, and all the kids know that, but like once he does something good or has a good rep, like it can't be just one coach celebrating it. Can't be. I think like the whole team needs to say good job. I'm not saying like let him beat you. Hey, John, it's Joe. We know he's not good. Let him be easy on. It's not so much that we watch our matchup. I'm not putting my best kid against my weak kid to think that's going to build toughness, because that actually makes the kid never want to come back. That's like the dumb approach that I hear a lot. It's kind of scary how much I hear that on a youth football level. Yeah. But we do watch matchups, but whenever they do something good, his teammates need to be happy, celebrate it. Coaches do, and then the parents will appreciate it. The kid will be happy and more comfortable to be there. Like it's just a team effort to build these kids up. Yeah, that's kind of my approach to it. So,
no, I agree. So you've been coaching youth football for you said about 15 years now. What's your favorite humorous or inspiring anecdote or story from those 15 years?
Oh man, there's been several championship years, but those aren't. A lot of those years I just had kids too. Not to take away from their job, we did, but at the end of the day, some of these kids we had some good teams. We probably weren't going to lose, especially with us coaching them. But I got to go with this past season, honestly. There's a lot of individual success stories with kids coming to football, being in a structured environment, turning their life around, eventually getting scholarship. A couple years ago, a kid that I coached, he actually just got offered from Syracuse, so he got his first D1 offer, and this kid was going nowhere fast, and yet his home was like, there's a lot of little individual success stories how football and positive environment saved, literally like saved his life or to project, direction of his life. But I got to go with this past year because I took over a team. They weren't very good. They lost a lot of the best 3 players left because they didn't want to play there. But they were all very timid. It was more so a confidence thing. They just were there just because their parents wanted to be there. They didn't. It's just such a confidence thing. Not even so much an ability thing. It was a confidence thing. So we started the season 0-3. It was rough. I was talking to my coach. I'm like, I didn't think we were going to win a game. These first 3 games were atrocious. 2 out of our 3 losses were the worst games I've ever been part of. It was really making me question my ability, how I'm able to do this. Like, what am I doing wrong? But we just started practicing better and little confidence, like we talked about. We just build up little confidence. We took the few good things they did, and like, there's potential here. Yeah, the result wasn't good, but there is something here. There's like, not hope, but there's like, there's potential here. So there was a lot of good we seen potential, and then just kind of just the kids. We lost 3 in a row. We are third when we went 0-3. That loss is really bad, but the kids came back and they were like, we had a great week of practice for the first time ever, which helped, and we had a really good game. We started fast and then we just rattled off 5 in a row. And what I was most proud of just seeing the transformation from a bunch of timid kids that didn't really care to be there. We weren't really competitive. They didn't want to compete. Like, they weren't really trying to play, and to flip the switch to just, we win 1 in a row. Like, wow, we played a great game against a bad team, but that's what we needed. The team was worse than us, but like, we needed that. We had a solid victory. All the kids got to play so much. It was great. And then it just carried on. Then we beat, all the other playoff teams from last year to get into the last seed. So started 0-3. The kids didn't really want to be there. The kids weren't confident, and it just rattled off 5 in a row and lost by a touchdown to the number 1 team, who ended up going 11-0 and won the whole thing. So just the transformation, man, was incredible to see. It was just like, it is by far my best. I've went undefeated in one, but this is by far the best, just with good coaching and building confidence, man, and having fun. And then once it all came together, they learned how to practice, how we do things. It was they went from not doing things very good or not having coaches that were very committed to, it was like, night and day. This was 0 to 100 really fast, completely different. Yeah. So once they grasped it and they got, we all kind of learned how each kid had to be kind of coached too. Like, every kid was so different or so weird. I can't even explain it. They're all like so required. Some of them need to be a little bit harder on, some needed confidence, but just going from not wanting to be there and not competing to kids having fun, happy to be there, excited, making plays, playing with energy, particularly on defense, finally, like being excited and parents starting to buy in. It was by far my most gratifying season, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, it's always fun. It's always fun to be a part of the turnaround.
Yep. So we'll see, keep it going. I get this team back next year, so we'll see if we could, take the next step. Not start 0-3.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Let's see what you got next.
All right. What's the best way to condition your players during practice? Because for me, honestly, I think a lot of coaches just do conditioning as a practice. I was curious how you structured yours in regard to conditioning your athletes.
A couple points to that. One, we especially at the older levels, we want to make sure the kids come into the season conditioned. That's really a big question for the summer, more so than the fall. The second note on that is we normally do, some sort of structured conditioning at the end of practice, just so the kids aren't tired for indie period and whatnot. Whether it's younger kids, and that means agility competitions, to your point, or, do like, pro agility shuttles and have them race each other and make sure there's 4 kids for every group so that they're rotating 2-on-2. So they're getting, a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. Like, you can work them in pretty hard on that. Still make competitive relay races with 3 kids per team. So they're getting 1/3 of every sprint, of every moment sprinting. So doing some of that at the end of practice. Then during practice, it's the tempo at which you run drills at, to be honest. And there's a time to slow down and run drills that you can teach and teach periods, so to speak. But there's also times when we're not stopping the coach. We're running this at game pace, and we're learning how to operate in a game-like situation. And the king of that, from what I can think of, one came to mind was Chip Kelly, where guys, they practice the way they want to play, and they practice fast, and they coach off film. Now, you may have that ability to do that in certain settings, and at other lower levels of football, you may not have the infrastructure to do that. But the philosophy is the same, which is your practice needs to be hard at times so that the game is easy, right? The game shouldn't be the hardest part of the week. The game should be the candy on top. So if we get to certain team periods, we're not stopping the coach. We're not stopping. I know. So I mentioned before, we had 3 3rd and 4th grade teams. Sometimes at the end of practice, we would go team period against each other to get a live look. And sometimes the other coaches would try to stop and move things. And no, don't stop. Let's go. That's an indie period. That's an after the period question. That kid goes to the sideline and talks to another coach thing. And if you want to coach the kid, but you can't stop the drill. We got to operate at game speed right now. And it got to the point where our team, again, 3rd and 4th grader, so it's muddy, but our team was considered like breakneck pace when we played, and we huddled and everything. But the kids broke the huddle, got in the line of scrimmage, snapped the ball, got in the huddle. Like, we were quick in terms of the way we operated. Where some of the other teams were taking really more than what the play clock was supposed to allow for. We were snapping the ball with like 20 seconds left on the play clock because our kids knew to operate. And I know when I coached college, that was the case. When we got to team period, like, we had our scale periods where we could stop and break things down. We had our indie periods we could stop. Fundy periods, we were not stopping. Hurry up offense periods, we were obviously not stopping. Team periods, we were not stopping. We were going. And there was never going to be a stop the play. And the way we enforced that was, I was the offense coordinator, so I had the script, but the quarterbacks who were signaling from the sideline to simulate the game structure, they also had their own script. And so if I was off talking to a receiver, they were already signaling the next play to the quarterback. So if I needed to say something, I had 5 seconds to say it until the quarterback who was in the drill had the play, and then the ball was going to be snapped again. So unless I subbed that kid out that I needed to talk to and put someone else in, we weren't stopping. And I think that's a fairly good model to go on. I also think it just comes to proper drill selection. I hate drills where you have one person doing something and 8 kids watching. Like, that's just
that happens a lot on a youth level. It's crazy.
And I know, like, sometimes it's unfortunately necessary just because of lack of hands on deck. Like, you just don't have enough people who can help, and you're 1 or 2 people trying to work with 20 kids, and it's not always easy. As much as you can do it some of the time, you can't get them all moving all the time. So I get it sometimes in youth football. But trying to avoid things where kids are taking less than a quarter of the reps, I think is a good start to that too. Like, you never want your work to rest ratio in a drill to be worse than 1 to 4. If I can have 4 kids rotating through a drill, that means the kid is active 25% of the time. And it means there shouldn't be a break between kid 1 doing the drill ending and then kid 2 starting. It's got to go straight through. So in some ways, it's simulating conditioning as well as getting the skill or the drill executed in the way it's supposed to be done. So I guess to quickly summarize conditioning: 1, that's an off-season question for higher levels of football. 2, structured conditioning at the end of practice is good. Now, for teams that practice 5 days a week, you should not condition 5 days a week. Your kids are just going to break down. Structured at the end, at least, 2 or 3 days a week of structured conditioning is plenty. And then making sure your drill selection and structure, and especially your line structure, not meaning linemen, but how kids wait for the drills is an important component to that as well.
Yeah, especially we don't have a lot of time for practice. We can't spend 20 minutes in these, conditioning drills and stuff. But for us, everything you said is pretty much what we do. We'll do a lot of our conditioning with the pursuit drill. And it's funny you say this because we were doing pursuit drill right after we stretch. We go right out. We just do our pursuit drill. But we were tired because it is a fast-paced session, and we were actually a little tired early on before we got Jake. But when we went right into Indy after it, so I kind of, to your point, it's funny you say that because I ended up switching it towards like either in the middle of practice or that's how we did our conditioning.
Yeah.
So it made a difference because these kids were still tired from it's 90 degrees or 85 to 90 degrees. Or it's the first 2 weeks. I'm like, I need to chill with the killing them for practice, but. And I also like, just to add a little bit to this and we'll keep it moving. I do like, in regards to conditioning, doing things that work, especially with the older kids. I guess this is more so a little bit older than maybe fifth grade and up, in my opinion, is to do things that, you kill multiple birds with one stone. Like we won't just line up and run sprints. We will line up and we'll do the pursuit drill, and we'll just keep switching groups. So we're working alignment, we're working assignment, we're working attacking, the 3 A's we call it, taking the proper pursuit paths, and we're conditioning our players. We're teaching them how to line up fast, because we're going to pretend, say we're in, it's a short, we call it short time situation where there's not a lot of time left, but we're on defense. Offense doesn't have to wait for us. Or if we play two teams that go with, they don't huddle, they're all fast. So we played them early in the year too, which didn't help. But so we're practicing how to line up fast too. Offense doesn't have to wait for us. So we're practicing multiple techniques. We even zone drop with it. We're a big cover 3 team. Again, we're older. So we'll practice our zone drops, pursuing to the ball, even on a pass, so. And then we'll work our 2-minute offense. It's usually on air as part of our sprints at the end. We'll just go through our passing concepts, how to spike the ball. We run left, the ball is going to be spotted on the left hash, or we throw left, get that way, running at it. You got to practice that stuff too. So we're working conditioning, and we're also practicing our plays and practicing situation. A lot of our situational football actually is done in our conditioning, not prevent, but defending with not a lot of time left, and also having to score. But teams don't even spike the ball or communicate plays. So many teams don't practice situational football, but big part of that is we do that in our conditioning.
Yeah, that makes sense. My next question to you, and this was a big one for me this year. Youth football is coached largely by volunteer dads.
Yep.
And volunteer dads, as well-intentioned as most of them are, they have agendas, they have varying backgrounds in football, they have varying experience in football. Some of them haven't played. I know my 3 assistants didn't play football, didn't coach football before. So it was me and 3 completely raw dads, which was great. I appreciated their time. The question then becomes, how do we create buy-in from volunteer dad coaches, right? And that's been an issue for our league, is getting dads to buy into trying to be systemic across the organization, rather than having each team act as its own little club team. So how have you gone about trying to create buy-in from volunteer dads in the coaching setting?
Yeah, I have a really good answer for that, because that was something I struggled with early on when I was a head coach. The biggest thing which worked for me the last couple of years is giving them responsibility, actually. Our running back coach, he is coaching the running backs. That's his. Is he going to stay within our scheme and our identity? Yes. He can't be teaching things different. We all got to be going the same direction in regard to speed, a scheme, and just accountability, what we expect. But I think if you give them ownership, you're coaching the running backs, this is your position group, take pride in that. And then also, the running back coach can't be worrying about what the offensive line didn't or did do, and vice versa. So I think giving them responsibility, letting them run with it a little bit, let them take pride and ownership in it, it helps. That has been the biggest thing I did. Does that always work? No. Sometimes, if we got a dad that his son's playing the line, he just can't help it, So sometimes pairing him, the father with the son, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But I just think assigning responsibility, it just makes people feel part of it, that you care what they think and you don't micromanage them. Again, it's an element, everyone's got to kind of be on the same page. With our boss security, we talk wrist above elbow. I don't want to hear high and tight from anyone else. I don't want to hear, let's all speak the same way. So it's consistent to the kids. Even with our energy, same thing. But I think assign them responsibility and let them take ownership of it. You know what I mean? That has been what's worked best for me. Is it 100% perfect? No, it's not. But that is the biggest thing. My biggest piece of advice is they want to feel a part of it. The head coach needs to listen. People do come from different backgrounds, and the head coach kind of has to be the head coach too sometimes. So, but I think it's just letting them do their thing. Don't micromanage them. Just, if this is your position group, man, coach them, have fun with them. Let them do some of the stuff they would want to do too, as long as it obviously, it fits within, what we're doing schematically is the big thing. So I think assign responsibility, man, and let them take ownership of it, and then really make sure they're focusing on their position group. When we have the ball, our running back coach, he's watching our running backs. He can't be watching the line or watching everything. And that also helps us really lock in, like, okay, hey, Johnny's not taking the right step, or we're asking him to kick out. Say we're running power. Our H-back is too wide. He can't really root that kid out if he squeezes. You know what I mean? So little things like watching alignment, watching effort, watching body language, managing the kid's mental. You could see it on their face. Body language screams, right? So things like that, and it gives them ownership. And eventually it's like, first off, some coaches will be like, well, you know, always make me just do this. But then they kind of, over time, you know, it's their position, man. And their position group does good. They get excited. And then it helps me as a head coach, helps our coordinators too, what's going on. And then on the same side on defense, because so many times I'm watching what the opponent's doing on both sides of the ball from scouting. And again, I'm a little bit older age level coaching, but I think, you know, just have coaches lock into a position, give them responsibility, and whatever that responsibility is, you figure that out as a staff, but let them own it. Let them, you know, let them feel like it's their group. That's what's worked the best for me for the most part.
Yeah. All right. Great. All right. Fire number 5 at me then.
Oh yeah, it's on me. Do you think RPOs are too advanced for middle school football, 6th through 8th grade? I've had a couple coaches ask me, I don't know if RPOs are too advanced and what one should I run, just in general. And maybe also too, add a second part to it is, what age do you think would you start implementing them if you wanted to?
So I ran RPO this year with my 2nd grade quarterback.
Oh, okay.
RPOs are 100% not too complicated, but there's a couple caveats to that. The first is the idea that the kids are the limitation. The kids are not the limitation. The coaches are the limitation. Sure. It's our ability to communicate that stuff effectively and efficiently. Like, if I look at a play and I think it's super complex, that's going to reflect in the way that I teach it. And if I can simplify it to just the bare essentials, to the point where I can speak to someone on their level about something they don't yet understand, it's like that phrase, explain like I'm 5. I can explain an RPO to a 5-year-old, right? Yeah. I can do that. So I can coach an RPO, and not to sound like an arrogant ass, but I've done enough of this and I've worked with enough kids in my day job that I can do that. If I had asked one of my other dad coaches to install the RPO, 0% chance it gets done. Not because they're a bad dude, just they don't have the experience to do that. So if the question is, are RPOs too complicated? 100% no. They're not too complicated at all. We ran 3 or 4 different types of RPOs with our 3rd and 4th grade team. And again, our 3rd and 4th grade team was 9 and 10-year-olds. Our quarterback was actually a 2nd grader. He was 8. And we ran RPOs. We ran just we called it skin, where it was just a speed cut in. We just read off the will backer and the X is running the in. If the will fills, we throw the skin. If he stays, we handed it off. And we ran that. And we completed it. We ran the fullback slide. So we ran a lot of split zone stuff. And then we would pass up the split zone and read the end. If the end crashed, we'd throw it out to the flat to the fullback. If the end stayed, we bluffed it, but we bluffed it with the QB read. Like, we ran read option as well. Mm-hmm. But we also ran it as an RPO off the end, where we could throw the ball to the fullback because the will was so aggressive fitting sometimes, because that's what little kids do. That, you know, we said, well, we're going to read the end because the end is a lot wider than the will. And you know, we'll read him on the throw to the fullback, because our quarterback wasn't that fast, because as we mentioned, he was 2 years younger than the other kids. But he could take in, hey, if you just tell the kid, when we run this play, read the defensive end, and then you rep it in practice to the point where he knows either give it or throw it. It was good. I don't think it's too complicated. So the first caveat there is it's not the players that are the limiting factor; it's the coaches. Yeah. The second caveat is, you know, how much experience does a coaching staff have? So are RPOs too complicated? Absolutely not. But are RPOs the right thing for every team? Absolutely not. The same as I could never install a wing T. I never played in a wing T system. I've never coached on a wing T team. I recognize it. I can draw it up on film. I can talk about Sally if you show me on all 22 film. I cannot install that myself effectively with kids. Yeah. I don't know it well enough. And I don't know the best ways to term and verbalize things. I think the same thing goes for lots of different sides of the ball, and I could go on for hours about this stuff. But you know, when I hear a coach say that's too complicated for my kids to learn, what I really hear is that's too complicated for you to teach. Yep. You know, like, you're not a capable enough teacher, and then perhaps that sounds a little bit rude, and in some cases it is, but in other cases it's more just an acknowledgement of you have to coach what you know. You can't coach something you don't know. So no, we ran read option, we ran split zone, we ran zone lead with a read on the backside, we ran RPO. We actually ran a triple play that Auburn used to run where we would go read option off the end. If the end crashed, the QB pulled, but now we're actually reading the corner and our receivers running the stalk. If the corner steps up, the stalk would release and we'd throw it deep to him. That was the ambitious one for me. So that's really triple at this point. And it's an advanced form of triple. I did have an advantage in this, that the second grade quarterback was my son, which I didn't originally want at the beginning of the season. I wanted a fourth grade quarterback. I didn't want my 8-year-old having to play against 10 and 11-year-olds all the time, but that's the way it ended up working. I couldn't find a fourth grader who could throw the ball. So I was like, all right, let's go for broke. Let's line up. So I did have a little more access to our quarterback than some other teams have, and I was able to go home and watch it on film and draw it on a whiteboard with him. And he's also 100% dialed in on this stuff. Like, he asked me, "Hey, Dad, can we go draw plays on the whiteboard?" I'm like, "All right, sure, great." So I had a little bit of an advantage on that. But the point is that as an 8-year-old, he learned this stuff and he knows it. He also recognizes cover 1, 2, 3, and 4. He knew we were playing 3 match on defense when the strong safety was supposed to carry versus fit a gap and stuff. He knew it, and our kids knew it. I'm not just trying to talk about myself. Our kids knew the stuff. We played 3 match on defense. The strong safety knew he was reading through 2. If 2 released, he was going to carry. If 2 didn't release, he was flat hot to the ball. Corners knew they were reading 1. If 1 went in, drop to your 3rd. But if he went vertical, you match that after 10 yards. You stay with them everywhere. Our kids knew that because we repped it. Yeah. And I'm fortunate that I get to do this in my day job as well as my volunteer job. So I've had a decent amount of practice in terming this stuff. But I don't think many things are too advanced. I do think you get to a point where the volume for the kids might be too much. But I also think that threshold is a lot higher than people think it is, particularly if your offense has good connectivity between plays. Like when we ran our base zone, our offensive line only learned 1 scheme. They learned zone. That was it. We didn't learn a gap. We didn't learn trap. We didn't learn speed option. We ran zone. By halfway through the season, we split it up to inside zone and outside zone. But even before that, they just knew it as a zone. We didn't even call it inside or outside. We said, you're taking your play side gap. You're trying to fit square at that point. If you're uncovered, you're comboing to the play side. It was just zone. I think the threshold that kids can learn is much higher than most coaches are. A lot of coaches come to me and say, "Oh, you can't run 10 plays. Just pick 5 that you're really good at." I'm like, I agree with the logic of executing something well, but no one said I can't pick 20 if I can get my kids good at it. So we ended up this season, at the end of the season, we ended up having 22 plays. And it was more than that because we could run it from more formations and stuff. But we had 22 full plays that we could run from 2 to 3 different formations, and I'm talking about plays that we ran well. There were plays that we tried to install that our kids didn't get. And I obviously didn't do a good enough job coaching it, and I scrapped it. Or perhaps it was just a shitty play in the first place, whatever it is. But, our kids learned about 22 plays that they could execute properly from 2 to 3 different formations, including RPO, including read option, including variations of 3 match. And we only had 4 defensive calls. So our volume on defense was fairly light and allowed us to focus more on offense. But our 4 defensive calls were quite diverse. We played 3 match. We had a 0 blitz. We had a hot blitz where we were playing like a 32 fire zone. And then we just had a stunt up front. So, it was reasonably straightforward at that point for them on defense. We could spend a little more time on offense. But no, I don't think it's too complicated. You just got to teach it correctly. Yeah,
that's the thing why we haven't done much RPO. We're wing T based, and we do some direct snap stuff and still run the same, run concepts. So we're eliminating the quarterback handed off. It's not like a gimmick or something oddball. We're running power just direct to our back. We're running buck direct snap. Nothing changes for anyone else. But anyway, I wanted to implement some read stuff and other RPO, but I just don't feel like my ability to coach it would be great. That's the only reason, and that's the only reason why I haven't switched or worked on some zone stuff, because I like that you could have 1 scheme and do a million different things out of it, and it's simple for the kids. And you play, for me, the biggest thing is playing fast, winning that first set, playing fast. Speed is power is what we always say. So that's why I like it, but I feel like I couldn't. All the clinics I've been doing, I'm trying to learn more about it. And then, you and I had a live about it, which is what really kind of wow, this is good stuff. It actually helped me defend it a little bit too against a real good zone team, knowing it. But I don't feel like I was able to teach it with the zone or RPO. That's why I didn't do it. The one RPO real quick, and we'll keep going. that we did run. It was a pre-snap RPO. I don't even know what you want to call it. We would basically, we had a mobile quarterback. We were pretty much not empty, but we spread the field. We were 2x2. We had a back. We would push motion our back, and if they didn't match it pre-snap, they didn't roll down or bump out to it, we would throw it to them. And it was our best kid in space. So even if they matched it, sometimes our best athlete in space, quarterback misread it, or maybe they're rolling to it indecisively. That's what caused some confusion, was a kid would half-ass kind of roll to it, or they would, but slowly. So it was like, should I keep it or throw? But we'd push motion pre-snap right off the bat. As soon as we're set, make sure everyone's set first. And then we push the back out. They match, put the third guy out there, or we got 2-on-2. We're going to, they put the third guy out there. We're going to keep it and run QB power. That's a direct snap and run power. If they didn't match it, we throw it. The best athlete in space. So that was the best, I guess you could say, we always call it pre-snap RPO, but that was our best RPO and one I felt confident in teaching. When you push it out, man, they either do something about it decisively or they don't. That's what I learned. And
so I think it carries into the conversation here that when coaches think that unusual formations like empty and motion are too complicated for kids, it's almost like you're cutting off their most important tool. Like if you want to simplify an RPO for a quarterback, get into 10 personnel, go 4 strong, the empty RPOs with the quarterback run are problematic at all levels of football just because your numbers don't work. Like you turn on Jackson Dart at Ole Miss and it's the same thing. You turn on, any of these mobile quarterbacks with you turn on Jalen Hurts with the Eagles, they still do some of this stuff sometimes. Sometimes they do it with the running back lead. Sometimes when you get into these, it's what essentially amounts to empty RPO. You've simplified the defense to the point where they can't be right because you're willing to use the quarterback as a runner. You've changed the math. And if you say that that's too complicated for kids, what we're saying is, well, we're not going to give you your best tool, or your biggest advantage because we don't feel that we can coach it. And I think that, like for us in our league, we're not allowed to get an empty yet. We have rules on formations in the 3rd and 4th grade level, but I don't particularly like those rules because I think you're kind of cutting off some of the kids' tool. I understand what they're doing. I'm not complaining, but I think having that diversity is important for the kids to help introduce them to things that A, they're going to need to know in the future if they're going to play long term, and B, put teams that may be at a talent disadvantage and give them at least a scheme advantage so they can be competitive. I think that's important. So, I like that play at all levels of football. We ran it in college. So, especially we're pushing 4 strong and then running, QB counter weak and stuff.
Yeah. Pushing the empty, that's tough from a defensive standpoint. Like when I'm drawing things up and just pushing, starting 2x2 and pushing 3x2 to empty with the mobile quarterback. Our OC, we had this installed. We didn't run it enough. We had that push RPO, but we worked on something. We didn't call it enough. We practiced a lot with it. We didn't call it enough, which is kind of a waste, some fat on our end as what we messed up as coaches, but we went empty. This was not last year, it was actually the year before. We had a very good mobile quarterback. He was our best kid. So we had to utilize him. So we would push to empty. They didn't match the third, the guy we're pushing out before. We throw a good athlete in space. Even if they didn't match it, sometimes we're like, we're just better than them. We'll just throw it out there. But we ran QB dart with a stick RPO from 3. It was, oh my God, it was unstoppable. Again, I didn't code. That was his play. He was our OC. So, he installed it. He was able to communicate. That was by far, I got some of that on our YouTube. He's also OC for our high school. So QB dart play at an empty and just, oh my God. And then a return motion, bringing someone back in, bringing who, the number 2 receiver who's off the ball, bringing him back in. And then they didn't know if they should bring the outside linebacker back in, the safety back. Like they didn't know how to match that back in. So going at pushing to empty and return motion back to empty and running all those concepts, it's simple and it's real. It was a real problem. That was the year we went 10-0 and won the whole thing. So I think RP, long story short, I think they can do it as long as you rep it and could teach it. That's the thing.
100%. All right, Jeff, I'll finish this up here. Last question. If you could provide one resource to every youth football coach in the country, what one resource do you think would be the most helpful for coaches?
I mean, this is a little biased, but I mean, youth football online just because of our diversity. But before, and I would definitely watch I learned so much from your Instagram, just the passing concept, the run concepts, just how to speak in football language too. You know, like I definitely think, you know, our stuff, all the stuff we got going on is a great resource. Can't really go wrong. But let's think about how I want to say this. It's more so finding something, you know, obviously a credible resource, but finding something that you believe in and that you can coach, I think is the biggest thing, something that fits your team. Like I run the wing tee and what we do just because we've been doing it for 12 of the 15 years. It's morphed and, you know, adjust it and to personnel sometimes with some things, but like that's what we do. That's how we teach. So it's just when we hit the ground running. I got the same 4 guys with me every year. So like we're hitting the ground running. So I think, you know, any of the stuff we have available online is great resources. A lot of it's free, you know, too. You know, just find a resource you like that's credible and just find something that you feel like you could coach. I hope that makes sense. That's my answer to it.
Yeah.
You know, just teach something you can communicate because it's, you know, like you said, you got to be able to communicate it. Got to be able to teach it with decisiveness. You have to be confident, you know, and, you know, just dive into something and stick with it. Something that, you know, obviously talent does dictate that, team skill set does change things. But at the end of the day, good schemes are good schemes. You know, things using formations, going empty, that's stresses a defense. Just figure out something you believe in that thinks that, you know, you think that's good for your team, get your coaches on board and just dive into it. And then, you know, kind of stick with it because then I learned what teams did, what we had some problems with, and both sides of the ball, offense and defense. You know, over time, like running our 3-5 stack, we're a big cover 3 team. And in the first year I installed the 3-5 stack, we were getting absolutely shredded in the seams by 4 birds, right? 3 high, you go 4 birds. So we come up with solutions for that. You know, carrying number 2s, you know, splitting our corners, splitting the difference, playing a little bit heavier, especially to the field side and the boundary in particular, a little bit heavier on the number 2. So we could kind of, you know, split the difference there. And then, you know, biggest thing was carrying, collision them, carrying them. That was the big thing. So, and then showing man and then actually playing cover 3. We'd go 13, we'd show man, get them out of 4 vertical, and then we're actually bailing to cover 3. And then showing, we go 31, we'd show 3, play 1, post snap. Yep. So like that's just something we learned, you know, like just sticking to what we do. And then the different blitzes and you know, I have like 2 stunts, but you know, we just do what we do and we're so good at coaching. It's not that it's the best thing ever. It's just we could communicate it and we kind of have answers for everything just from doing it for so long. So just dive into something, man, commit to it, something you believe in, something you could coach that maybe you coach something similar when, or, you know, when you played, that's what you learned, or, you know, just pick something, man, and stick with it and just learn it, get really good at it. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. I think if I had to offer an answer there, I'll go a different direction than an X's and O's resource. If I could give one thing to every coach, it would be a practice template that pigeonholes them into doing more indie time and fundy time.
That's good.
Just so the kids would have the proper distribution of practice structure. I see a lot of teams that get up there and they just run plays for 45, 50 minutes and barely do any indie time. And you know, the kids, they don't necessarily learn skills. They learn the 5th grade offense. I'm like, well, that's great, but how far is that 5th grade offense going to take you, you know, down the road compared to, you know, the fundies and indie drills that, you know, hopefully will teach you the requisite skill set and underlying motor programs that you need to be successful. So I'd like to see a more appropriate distribution of practice time across drill sets.
Yeah, that's probably the best answer because honestly, you don't have a lot of time and it's just, you got to structure your practice, find out a plan and just work on that, you know?
Yeah. Well, Jeff, thank you for hopping on and spending some time with us. Hopefully we got some good answers out there for folks. Always good to talk to other coaches and see what, you know, see what people have to say. I'm sure we'll be seeing you guys around soon.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.